Hello everybody and welcome back to the Leeds Lens. Something slightly different. We've got an 8 o'clock show on a Friday, and to be honest with you, I'm considering making this a thing. So depending on how this stream goes, we potentially will always do a Friday night show, and I want this show to be all about you guys. That's what I want it to be about. I want this to be a conversation. Yes, we've got stuff to talk about. We're going to talk a bit about Okafor and the interview he's done with Barron Cross today, and we've also got a few comments on my video that I did earlier, obviously the preview. Check it out if you haven't already. That I wanted to talk about as well, because I think there's some really interesting talking points in there. But as I said, this show, I'm going to try and make it all about the comments and all about getting you guys involved. And if we have to go into different areas of topic of conversation, that is exactly what I want to do. So as I said, this show relies really on you guys getting your comments in. And if you like this sort of content, yeah, let me know by dropping obviously a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. But yeah, before we get into it, let's get into the stream. And let's start talking about Okafor, because he has done an interview today with Barron Cross. I thought it was quite an interesting interview. And obviously I've based the sort of title and thumbnail all around sort of Noah Okafor and the comments that he sort of said today. One of the main interesting one out of all of the stuff he said, in my opinion, was the comment around where Okafor's going to play in the team. Because obviously we've talked quite a lot on the channel when we signed him that he could operate up front. If that's an option, obviously tomorrow, with the lack of strikers we potentially have, could that be an option? But no, it looks like Okafor, one of the main reasons for coming to Leeds United was to play on that left-hand side, because that's what Daniel Farke said. And he said this in a quote. Let me get the quote up exactly so I can read it word for word. On why he joined Leeds, Daniel Farke said he sees me as clearly a left winger. That's my position there, and that's where I'm the best version of myself. So that is the exact situation with Okafor. He is going to be playing on the left-hand side, which I think, as I said, when we talk about sort of Okafor and where he's going to feature at Leeds United, I think it's really interesting to have such clear sort of clarification of where he's actually going to feature in this Leeds United setup. Because as I said, we have talked about him potentially playing in the 9 role, as he's obviously done earlier in his career, I believe. Did he do it at Salzburg a number of times? Mark says, evening to you, Mark, as well. I hope you are enjoying the show. But he also went on to say, another point of this is that for me, it's the most important thing to play every game. Then I get to be on my top, get on my top, develop each thing I have to improve. So basically what he's saying is that he wants to be playing a team. And I think that's been one of the issues with Okafor. I think he's a player that quite clearly, from what he said, thrives on playing minutes and actually playing in a team. And sometimes you have to drop down a level to get to your playing time. We've seen this so many times with different players that sometimes you've got to drop that level to obviously feature into the team. And I think when he comes in at Leeds United, you look at that left-hand side and the opportunities there definitely to play. Ramazan is now gone. Nonto's not had the start to season potentially some of are expecting. Yes, he's not been awful. That is not what I'm saying. But has he set the world on fire? Absolutely not, I don't think. I think that's a fair comment to make. So I think it's obviously, that's where I think Okafor thinks he can come in. And I actually think these quotes as well really suggest to me that of course Leeds United, or that of course Okafor is going to start the weekend. I think going into the game at the week, obviously tomorrow, I actually thought potentially would still play Nonto and James as 2 wingers. Having read them quotes today, I think it's quite obvious that obviously Okafor is going to come into the 11. He also said, on fitness and training, I have developed the last 6 months a lot of my speed. The thing is not just about one sprint or two times because I'm extremely fast. The thing is to repeat it every time. And I think that is something we've talked about with Noah Okafor. I think Okafor, one thing that we're going to need is that transitional speed that obviously Okafor can offer. And I think, as I said, one of the main sort of reasons for buying Okafor is that sort of transitional speed, and the way he can get from sort of 0 to 100 in such a sort of short period of time. I think that's one of his main benefits, and the sort of power that he obviously offers. And I think that's potentially a profile in the Leeds United setup that we don't have. Like, we've got Dan James, who sort of is quite a quick winger, as we're all aware. But I think Dan James is just a quick winger as opposed to a powerful winger. Whereas I think Okafor is much more of a bigger build, stronger, more physical and more powerful. And obviously, yeah, taller as well. So I think that blends into it. I think you are sort of reading from these quotes why exactly, obviously, Leeds United have pulled the trigger on going for Noah Okafor. Right, let's get some of your comments anyway. BMG says, possibly Nonto right and Okafor left, although Farke does seem to like James. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people suggesting Nonto right and Okafor left. In my personal opinion, BMG, I've always thought for this game particularly because the thing is, do I think Nonto is a better right winger for the current Leeds United team than Nonto than Dan James? Yes, I do. However, each individual match plan for me because we are in my opinion, one of the weaker teams, probably bottom 5 teams for squad in the league. I think you've got to develop your game plan. And this is something that Thomas Frank has said so many times about newly promoted teams. You've got to develop, you've got to sort of or do different match plans per game. I think this is an obvious thing for the sort of newly promoted teams especially. And I think we've got to base that on what is going to be best for certain games. And I think for this particular game against Fulham, I said this in my preview earlier, I just think he's going to be better for me going with Dan James in this game. I think the defensive discipline that he'll offer to stop the threat of Robinson or Sessegnon, which is a huge thing for Fulham on that left-hand side. That's one of their main attacking outlets. To stop them, I think James is better at doing that. And also we know James offers that that sort of pacing behind that they can offer if Robinson's to go forward. And also I think if he's going against Dan James, Robinson's quick himself. He goes against Nonto. He's not scared of that pacing behind. With James, if he plays there, naturally Robinson will have to be more aware of the pacing behind because we know Dan James has got that sort of blistering pace for the counter-attack that Leeds United possess. So I actually think for this particular game, with the way I would like to set us up, with giving the onus to Fulham, which I've talked about, I do think Daniel James, obviously playing on that right-hand side, is the better of the two. Although I do think Nonto, as I said, for different match plans, would be a more appropriate pick. So yeah, that is the sort of situation on the right hand side. Are you hoping for a spot on the bench then? I am. I think I've got a lot to offer. I mean, as we talk about, Meslier is the squad got released today. It's all the players have obviously that are actually in the squad have sort of featured in there. And Melia's in there, so if Melia can make it, surely I can. I think that's a fair comment, BMG. BMG says James hasn't started great, although he did have an injury pre-season. He might be a bit limited at this level, but he's super quick and works his butt off. Yeah, exactly. Well, that is my feeling around Dan James. I think that I don't think he started the season well. I completely agree with that. And but I don't also think the games that we've played really have sort of really been a perfect game for Dan James. Like I look at even when he has his best times in the Premier League, even at Manchester United, of course. And he in them games, it was always when Man United were playing on the counter attack under Ollie's system, and I think that's probably where again, where James is gonna feature for Leeds United in the best sort of games is the games that we are going to be playing more on the counter attack, and I actually think this game suits that because I think that's how we should be playing with the way that obviously Fulham dominate the ball, but actually struggle potentially at times to break teams down. I think that's the perfect game plan, and I think to execute that game plan in the best way possible, I think Dan James should start on the right. Anyway, moving on from a few more Okafor quotes. He said that if I sprint 20 or 25 times a game, high speed, then this will be super hard for defenders. That's why I'm on it with Rolf, who is, I think Rolf is a sort of training coach that he's been working with, a fitness coach, to be able to allow Okafor to do sprint after sprint after sprint. And again, I think this shows in the sort of game plan that you've seen from Daniel Farke and why he's gone for Okafor. He's gone for Okafor for that pace and the power and his ability to sprint over a short distance and sort of get to a really high speed in such quick time, and the acceleration that he offers in doing that. And I think that's the way he's going to sort of beat defenders. And I think that is obviously why we've gone for Okafor, and I think that again is why we've got Okafor working with this coach called Rolf or whatever he's called. Is it Rolf Wolfe or something like that he's called? To improve his sprints, because that is a real key powerhouse for Okafor and one of his sort of key things in his arsenal. So of course, if he can maximise that and be able to do more and more of them in games, when he gets the ball, it could be super explosive. And actually, when I look at the Fulham game, and as I said, I talked about this in my preview earlier. Where I think we can actually get at Fulham is on that left-hand side with Okafor on the left. I think that is a real key sort of, but not just battle for us, but I think that's a battle that we can actually win quite comfortably. I think Okafor can have Tete's number, quote unquote. So I do think that I do think it's a good game for Okafor. I don't think Tete is the greatest fullback at this level. I think we'll face much more difficult fullbacks than Kenny Tete. Fight might not have had that superstar forward, but if they're all fit, he has a lot of options, including more defensive ones like Harrison and Aronson if we're defending a lead. Yeah, this is interesting, actually, because obviously this is something that is utilised throughout his sort of our Premier League status or time in the Premier League so far, bringing on Aronson and Harrison. My genuine opinion about this is that I think Harrison is a fantastic defensive winger. People like to hear that because obviously everyone hates Harrison, and that's fine, and I get that, and I'm not particularly pleased with what he's done either. But in terms of, if we look at him as a football and what he can offer this Leeds United thing, I do think bringing Harrison on in the 70th minute if we're winning a game isn't the worst strategy in the world. Or even like in the game that we obviously played against Newcastle, where we're trying to hold on to that point, which obviously was a really good point against Newcastle. I don't think it's the end of the world to bring on Harrison in the 70th minute. I think he's so defensively disciplined and does that role really, really well. So as I said, for me, that's a real sort of an option for Daniel Farke. However, with Aronson, I don't see it. I know Aronson runs around a lot. He's not physical enough. I don't think he's that defensively disciplined. I don't actually think he's that player to come on to sort of help the team at all. I don't. I know that's how Daniel Farke's used him. I just don't see it for Aronson, in my opinion. I think he's far too lightweight for that role. I think that role is all about sort of matching up with your, obviously, their fullback and sort of stopping them attacking. And actually, I think we've seen him done a lot of times when he's sort of been in a defensive responsibility. I think Harrison's a much better defender than Aronson. So for me, I honestly don't, and I don't want to bash Aronson because he does work hard and he is a bit of like a Duracell bunny in the middle of the park or sort of on the wing when he plays. But I don't really see the defensive sort of discipline that he offers, other than he runs around a lot. I don't see that. I think the only best thing you're going to get out of Aronson is if he gets on a run sometimes, he's not a bad dribbler at times. And I think potentially if we're breaking down a low block, maybe he can make that sort of run that we saw at Crystal Palace away all them years ago in the early stages of Jesse Marsh in that year went down, where we saw like an amazing run. I think he hit the post and Strout scored the rebound. That's where potentially you could offer something for Aronson. But except that, for me, I don't really see how Aronson fits into this team at all, if I'm being honest. I think, as I said, I think Harrison and Aronson are different in that situation. I can see it with Aronson. I can't see it with Harrison. I can't see it with Aronson. Interesting how the hate for the players fades away once the season starts. Bigger things to worry about, I guess. Well, exactly. I think that's probably. I think there'll be some parts of the fan base that obviously will still sort of not be pleased with Aronson, and obviously if people are paying to go to Leeds United games, they are, as far as I'm aware, they're free to boo players if that's how they feel. I think that's how you can express yourself in that way. Do I think it's detrimental to the team at times? Potentially, but I think if you're paying your hard-earned money and you work all week, of course you can have your opinion on a football pitch. I've never understood people that think otherwise. As I said, it can have a detrimental effect, but it doesn't matter. You're still willing to voice that opinion. But yeah, as I said, I think Harrison's just got to keep playing well. I did like the gesture as well of putting money behind the bar. I know people think that's just a nothingness. I actually quite liked it. I think of all the things he could have done, I really, really don't hate that one as an option, as a sort of a way to sort of bring back the fans in the best way possible, in the nicest way. I think it's not awful. That Aronson's role is just to be a complete pest and very occasionally bits of skill. That's sort of where I see him, mate. Yeah, that's what I see him. As I said, I don't think I think disciplined defensively, potentially. Maybe I said that earlier that he's not. I think potentially disciplined, but he can't do it because I just think his lack of physicality is such a con in his game and such a sort of negative in his game that I think that is a problem, I think. For Aronson and always been, and that will affect his defending as well. So him coming on the right wing to sort of help shore up, I really don't see that. I'd almost rather, if we're gonna sort of try shore up the defense on the right hand side, rather than bringing on Aronson, I would rather see Bogo to potentially to right wing. I know people are going to think this is mad. I'd rather see Bogo to right wing, and potentially put Sam Byram or James Justin at right back and short it up that way. We saw this with Fulham. I think the last obviously game week that was obviously the international break last week, but the week before they played Castagne as that right winger to short it up a bit, and then they had Tete there obviously against the Chelsea team. So I think that's something that we can adapt at times if we are trying to struggle. And we've seen it before, like we've seen Schmidt playing attacking areas before last season to sort of shore it up. I remember Middlesbrough away him doing that. So I think that's a better way of doing it than actually bringing Aronson into the sort of fold, in my opinion. I remember that Palace game. Aronson played so well for 45 minutes and has never really done it again. Yeah, I know. I actually thought it was okay, pretty decent at Chelsea at home. The 3-0 win that we had when we all thought we were going to win the league. I thought he was pretty decent in that game. I thought he was. But yeah, it was an awful signing, if we're being honest. It was an awful signing. I know people will probably like him for what he did last year. I think he ended up with 2 assists in a team that scored the most goals ever in a season that Leeds United have ever done. I don't think he was that unbelievable in the 10, if I'm being honest. I think if you'd have put a Hamer in there or someone of much more quality, you'd have seen it absolutely eclipse. Because the amount of times it went through Aronson, he sort of, for me, slowed down attacks and messed it up at times. I think that was a sort of problem. Smash a like, thank you very much. Yeah, and if you can, like BMG says, if you can smash a like, that would be fantastic. Because it lets me know that obviously people like these. I don't know if people like Friday at 8 p.m, but I think it could be quite a nice time. I think a bit more relaxed, as I said. Doesn't have to be sort of as thunderous, and we can get into different topics about Leeds United, topic about the past of Leeds United, wherever you want to go. I think that's what I want to do with this show. If people enjoy that sort of style, Aronson does potentially bring energy for the closing minutes. Yeah, but if you close somebody down and then they bully you off the ball and they run away with the ball, it almost neglects the closing down in the first place a bit, doesn't it? If you see what I mean. But he does run around a lot. As I said, he's like a bit like a Duracell bunny in there. Aronson for about 10 million would have been okay. Yeah, and I think we paid 25 or 35. It was, yeah. I think if the club could have made a PSR profit on him this summer, or even broke even on him potentially, they would have moved him on. But obviously that just wasn't a goer. So if it's Aronson or him sending him out on loan rather than damage, because if we'd have sold him for a negative this summer than what we paid for on the PSR scale, obviously what would have ended up happening is we wouldn't have been able to buy extra players because we'd have banked a loss. So you'd actually be better keeping him at that point. Which is why I think that's why we kept him, to be honest. Yeah, on to a few more Okafor quotes. Then he said, "When I'm fit, I get my confidence back and I get my game back." So I think, yeah, I think that's a normal quote. I think all players are sort of similar to that. It's been the most important thing to come every day with a smile and give my best on the pitch. I think we have seen this with Okafor. I do think with Okafor, he does seem like a bit of a confidence player, and he sort of needs to be in the right mould and frame of mind to sort of perform on the pitch. I think that's something we've probably seen, and I do think, by the sounds of it, he's not had his best time at AC Milan, and obviously Napoli. I don't think the Napoli loan obviously worked. I think he was in that team. I think with Okafor, he sounds like the character to me that needs a bit of his arm around his shoulder and needs to be told he's really good every day, and then he can perform on the pitch. I think that's the sort of gist I'm getting from this interview, that's sort of the sort of character is, which is not always a bad thing. It's better to be that than ridiculously egotistical and sort of back yourself and think you're the best player ever, even when you're quite clearly not. So as I said, people are going to look on that negative. I don't think it is a true negative, if I'm being honest. On a different topic, have you ever been on other LUFC channels, or do you plan to? You should. No, I haven't. No, I haven't. I think once back in the day, I went on One Leeds a long time ago, probably a few years ago, but I didn't even have a channel at that point. I have been reached out to by a few channels, so potentially something could happen in the future. But yeah, I'd be more than open to it. My whole thing is I just love talking about Leeds United, and I love interacting with people talking about Leeds United. So yeah, I'd definitely be open to it. It's just if people want, I don't know if people have got anything to offer. Hopefully, I think I do, but there we are. But yeah, I do. Yeah, I think that'd be nice. I think I probably should reach out to them. I've got a few connections. Like when we play a few of the teams this year, I've got connections that we're gonna get. So we'll get some good guests on. Jack says, "Evening, Scott. Evening, Jack." But yeah, so hopefully we'll have some sort of like pre-match chats with some different fans from different clubs. I think that could be quite nice, and like I'm quite good friends with the Sunderland fan and stuff like that we could bring on. So that could be good. So yeah, but because I've gone on his channel a few times anyway. It's more a podcast actually, but you'll know who he is, I think. What else did he say? He also talks about the importance of family and brothers. I don't think there's too much in that. And about, I think he's got a tattoo or something. Yeah, it's sort of irrelevant, I guess. But what I wanted to talk about a bit as well is that obviously I did my preview this morning. I released my preview this morning. And I had a comment, which, as I said, I always promote comments, and I've always said on this channel that if a comment is interesting and it can spark debate, I'm always happy to talk about it. Even if, obviously, BMG is really good for always being in a live chat and we can discuss it right at the time. And if you can watch live, I think that's always the best way to do it. But if you can't and you are watching afterwards, which I know a lot of you guys do, leave your comments in below and I'll always respond to them. But not just that, I'll bring them into a show. It's interesting. And I think this was an interesting comment, so I'm going to bring into it. Lexi B said, "Scott, how can you assume that we're one of the worst teams? At the moment, we're mid-table. The problem with content creators is they seem to build up the opposition in their imagination and downgrade our team to ridiculous levels. Sorry, but you sound full of fear. We have a good squad full of experienced players." And I think this was an interesting comment because obviously on this channel, I've I think it's quite obvious that I probably think we've probably got one of the bottom 5 probably teams in the division, in my opinion. Whereas I think obviously, and sometimes I would sort of find it interesting to look at other people's point of view. And obviously, Lexi B, I don't know if he's watching right now, but if he's not, regardless, I think he probably watches. We've seen him in the live chat a lot before. But I just found this interesting because it was obviously from a different point of view. But what I'd say to him and what I responded in the comment is that I just disagree. Like I don't agree with that at all. I I think we have got one of the worst probably 5 teams, and the reason I say that is because we're a newly promoted team, and naturally in the Championship you're not going to have the teams that the Premier League do, as we all know. We're also competing in a league now where, because no one's been relegated, nor all the teams that have got promoted have been instantly relegated for the last 2 seasons. Everybody in the league is so much richer because they've essentially got. If we've had 100 million spend for one summer, they've had 100 million spend for 3 summers going. Everybody else in the league, and obviously the likes of the top 6 have much higher turnovers than we do as well, which allows them to spend even more money. But even if you look at the likes of Wolves and Brentfords of the world and Forest and all these teams, Forest probably a bit higher up, but they've all had such increased expenditure on Leeds United. And as I said, because we are a newly promoted team as well, and we haven't had that extra money, I think naturally that's the level we're going to be at. And then I look at sort of what Farke said in his press comments, and I agreed with him on this. He said that sometimes we're going to have to adapt for game by game because we don't have that individual quality in our team. And this isn't to slag off the team, as I said, because there's not much the team can do about it. That is the situation we're in. And there's not, in actually, if you don't want to slag the board off, which I don't really at all times, it's not much the board can do, because if someone has a budget of 300 million, which is what Bournemouth will had over the last 3 years, and we've had a budget of 2 championship spends and 1 Premier League spend, so we're probably 200 million quid less than Bournemouth can spend over the last few years. That is hard to compete, and that will always be the case, which is why you need teams to stay in the division, because it stops these teams getting richer and richer and richer and richer. But that is the situation we're in now. So it's going to be, especially with this sort of lack of attacking quality that we think we've added, in my opinion. I don't think we've got an amazing attacking lineup compared to other teams. There you are. Easy is watching. Easy B's watching. And which I'll respond to your comment in a minute. But yeah, as I said, I just think that I don't think it's a huge criticism on sort of Leeds at the moment. I just think it's a case of the lack of spend that we're allowed to have based on PSR rules. Like if Leeds United could just go and blow a load of money this window because we're not in PSR restrictions, that'd be fantastic if we go spend 300 million. But that's what we'd have to do to compete, and that is why I think we're not quite at that level. I just think that, as I said, we're just slightly off that because we're obviously we've come up with a really, really good Championship team, by the way, an outstanding Championship team, but we just naturally don't have the quality of the Premier League teams because of the lack of money that we've had. Easy B, as I said, is in the comment, and he says, I'm watching and we are mid-table and we have 10 players who weren't in the Championship. No, I know that, and they weren't in the Championship, but Justin had just been relegated to Championship, and that's a terrible assumption, and like I don't really like saying that, but I don't think he's an outstanding Premier League player. I don't think Ball now is, and we're just going to rule out some of the sort of the weaker signs that we've probably signed on paper. I don't think Nemec has been in and out of teams in the Bundesliga for the last few seasons. Obviously, time at Wolfsburg was in and out. Okafor's not had the greatest time except at Salzburg. DCL's been in and out of an Everton team for a long time. And as I said, I'm not trying to slag these signings off. I just think we need to accept sometimes and understand where we are. And as I said, it's not an issue in terms of, like, I don't blame the board for this because it's hard. I don't know how you can compete with the lack of money. And I think that's why you're seeing, obviously, teams go up and down constantly because they just can't compete. So as I said, it's not me trying to slag off the whole team and slag off everything at the club. I just think that is the situation we're in. But I get we've signed 10 players, but you could say the same about Sunderland. Like, Sunderland have bought more than Leeds United have. I think they've bought something like, they bought 12 or 13 players, something like that, maybe even more. So as I said, I just slightly disagree. And also, obviously, part of your comment, Easy as well, was that sort of we are mid-table right now. But Sunderland, I think, are in 6th in the Premier League at the moment, and I don't think they're going to finish anywhere near 6th. And obviously, I think Fulham are in the relegation zone. Man City are lower than Leeds United. Are we saying that Man City are going to finish lower than Leeds? Of course we're not. So, like, I don't think we can really. I don't think the table becomes apparent, like BMG says, until about 10 games in. So that's sort of where I stand with it. How many points did you forecast us to get from our first 3 games? How many points do you forecast to get for the first 3 games? I didn't think we'd beat Everton. I thought we'd get a draw. I thought we'd lose at Arsenal, and I think I probably would have thought we'd got a draw. I think I'd have probably said 2 points because I did think we'd get something out of the Newcastle game going into it. That was my honest feeling. So yeah, that's so we have overperformed sort of where I'm at currently. I agree with that, but in the same breath as BMG says as well, it's not a big enough size. Like I slagged off Robbie Evans for saying this when he said that we're averaging 2 points at home. Well, we are, but it's such a small quantity size that after the first game we're averaging 3 points at home. It's only 1 game more. So as I said, I think we've got to accept sometimes a bit where we are, and I think that's why Daniel Farke accepts that, which we need to do, because if we go into Fulham thinking we're miles better than them and we're going to smash them over, what will happen is they'll play through us and they'll beat us in the game. That is what will happen, which is why I think sometimes you've got to go on strategically and find the best way to pick up points, which is what obviously Leeds United are doing. Matt says, how many Leeds players will get in the Palace team who are the definition of mid-table? And that's my point. I think they've got like some Mark Guehi in the team. They've got Mateta up front, who we'd all love, and Mateta was linked to Leeds United by James Marshman, who never really gets anything right because it's obviously part of his clicks. That's his job, and I don't hate him for doing that, but that is his job. And everyone thought it was madness for Leeds United to go anywhere near Mateta, and they were slagging him off, which obviously I don't agree with slagging him off, but I agree with the principle that we're never going to sign Mateta, and they've got him up front. And they had Eze last season. Obviously, they don't have him anymore. They've got Sarr. Like they've got Dean Henderson in goal. Like that is a strong team. They've got Adam Wharton, who's linked to Real Madrid in the midfield. We're not there yet. We're honestly not. And as I said, that isn't the worst thing in the world, and that's not me slagging off the team. Like I said, it's just a case of financial power, and because we haven't been in the Prem. Like if we hadn't have gone down and we've stayed up for 3 years, I think we'd be in a similar situation to Forest with these owners. I really genuinely believe that. I think we'd be nearly fighting for Europe. I think that's where we can push on to. We've just got to stay in the league longer so we can get that extra money that being in the league allows you to do. Because if we can spend 100 million this summer, 100 million next summer, 100 million the summer after, and 100 million the summer after that, instantly then you're stuck in the Premier League and you can't get relegated because you've stockpiled so much talent. Mark, not many. Remember our big sales last season? Great, Rutter and Somerville are not guaranteed starters in the Prem by any means, and that's the sort of point. We've played 2 Champions League teams, and I think that proves we're a lot more competitive than you think. But we have been hammered by one of them, to be fair. And yes, I agree, Newcastle was in the Champions League team, but we played them in a really good time to play them. Their front 3 that day was Osula, and I think they played 5 back, and they had Osula and Murphy up front as the 2. They didn't get into the top 4 last year, Newcastle, and they wouldn't get in the top 4 this year with Osula and Murphy up front. It wouldn't happen. The reason they got in the top 4 last season was because the likes of Isak were flying, Harvey Barnes, Gordon's, all these players were playing, which we're obviously missing in the game against Leeds United. So that wasn't a Champions League team that played against Newcastle. It really wasn't. They were on paper, but the injuries that they had made it. They weren't a Champions League team based on that. They didn't have Joe Linton in the midfield as well. They had tons of injuries, and that's not taking away from the result. It was a really good result, but as I said, that is not a Champions League. The team that Newcastle fielded that day is not a team that will get top 4 in the Premier League. It just is not. They won't score enough goals. Even the likes of Bournemouth, Brighton, Everton, West Ham were a few years off their squad, and exactly that's sort of where I'm at. But that's not, as I said, that's not down to recruitment team. That isn't down to anything else. That is just the situation of the Premier League at the moment, which is why teams keep going down, because they don't have you can't. If you buy if you're allowed to buy, I don't know, if you can buy 10 30 million pound players, which you could do with 300 million quid, or you get 3 and a 10 million pound player, which is more likely to work, 10 30 million pound players or 3 30 million players with a 10 million pound player. And I know we haven't done that in the recruitment. We've gone for sort of more 10 to 20 million pound players. But in the same breath, what's more likely to be more competitive? Well, obviously the 30 million pound players are, as a principle. Not that every single signing that you spend for 30 million, you're always going to get your money for your bucks. Like we've seen big signings at Leeds United fail. But that is the situation we're in. We had 2 of our most important players out. If we are so poor, they would have beaten us. I'm not saying we're so poor. That's never been my situation. It's just that wasn't Newcastle's starting 11. And yes, we had Tanaka out and we had Ampadu out. That is true. And I said that going in, that we've got injuries as well. But my point is that the Newcastle team that they played that day is not a Champions League team because they wouldn't have got. Like, I'll argue back to you, PSF. Do you think that Newcastle this year, with Osula and Murphy up front all season, if they sold Gordon, they sold Isak, which they already have, they sold Harvey Barnes, they sold all them, and they played with Osula and Murphy, and they stayed fit all season, they had them two up front, do you think they'd have got in the top four? No, they wouldn't. They'd finish like 8th or 9th. So that's probably the level of team that we were playing that day. In reality. But it was, as I said, Newcastle, they're well structured. Eddie Howe's a fantastic coach. It was a good point. And I said I took a point before, and I still take a point now. It was a good point. But I'm not, even in the same breath, going to turn around and tell you that it was the greatest Newcastle team that they can field all season, because it wasn't. And it's probably the same with Everton, if we're being totally honest as well. But as I said, it's going to see, because we've got new players coming back in the team. We've got Calvert-Lewin now fully fit. So Fulham's going to be a great test for that this summer. Everton and Newcastle were both significantly weakened, to be fair, though. We did form okay. We did, exactly. 100% we formed okay. We performed well. And we did well to get points in them games, really well, because the good teams, coached by good managers who've been Premier League teams for a while, and they've stockpiled loads of talent, and they're good teams. And that is not my point. They are genuinely really good sides, Everton and Newcastle, and they were both really good wins. Or a good win and a good point, for sure. But that's why. Look, I've predicted us to beat Fulham, so I can't be that negative. I actually think we're going to go down to beat Fulham, because I think the reason we're going to beat Fulham is that I think when they have the onus to try beat a team, and they've got to be the ones that progress the game and try get a result. When obviously Fulham, sorry, I'm reading at the same time. When Fulham try get a result in games and have to be the one progressing the game and trying to actually go beat a team, I think they struggle with it. Which is why I think you give them the onus, and then we can beat them. PSF says people in the chat are saying other squads are far ahead of ours, and yet they are not, in my opinion. Okay, yeah. In terms of fine, but what? How many players would get in the Palace team that Leeds have got, for example? Like, if you did, I don't love combined 11s. I can do them as a bit of fun, but I think, yeah. I just don't think we're there yet. But as I said, you're not going to be there. So it's not the board's fault nor the playing squad's fault. We're just not going to be there when they've managed to stockpile so much talent over the years of being in the league. We'll be in the same situation in a few years' time. Hopefully, we can stay in the league. So I do have your attention. Do I have your attention? Thoughts on BL getting into the starting 11? I would put him in the starting 11 for this particular game, because we're playing against a striker in Rodrigo Muniz, who is one of the best penalty box strikers in the league, in my opinion. That is his game. That is what he's good at. And the best penalty box defender I think we've bought, and the reason we've bought BL, is to be a penalty box defender. I think we made a mistake not playing him in the Arsenal game, which I think a lot of people have said afterwards. Strout was probably the right pick in the other two games, to be fair to Farke. But for this game specifically, when we talked about like why we're picking Nonto and not James on the wing, I think you can use the same narrative at centre-back. And you've got to pick, we've got 3 really top centre-backs, in my opinion, that are going to be really useful all season. I think Rodon's going to be a Stolhalt, and then I think you can pick between Biol and Strout based on the game scenario. And I think this particular game, because of the number 9 we're facing, just suits for me playing Biol. I think if we're playing maybe we're playing like an Ollie Watkins, in my opinion, who's a more sort of mobile striker, but not as brilliant, not as brilliant in the air, and not as powerful as a Rodrigo Muniz. I think potentially a Strout works better in a game scenario like that. So I think we've got to play it game by game, and I also think Strout's going to be better in games where we're going to have more of the ball, where we're going to try to be the progressor in the game. Like when we're playing Burnley at home and a lot of teams at home, I think we should be the progressor in the game and should be trying to beat teams. And as I said, so Strout's going to have uses for sure. And as I said, I think the Everton game was a perfect scenario for Strout to play. Leeds have got a lot of the ball. Get Strout in. He's really good at building out from the back. He also brings the ball into midfield really well. Perfect. But particularly in the Fulham game, where I think that I'd want to be giving them more of the ball, and it's going to be a lot of heading the ball out, stopping Muniz, getting in the crosses. I think Biol's that man to do that job more than Strout is, personally. It just suits his skill set more. So it's not a dig at Strout, it's just picking players for the certain game. And it's not a pick at Nonto that I don't want to pick him in the right wing. It's just picking for certain games, in my opinion. PSF, most squads are better and some are way better. We're okay. we're okay, but several of the players are unproven at this level. They really have to step up. We don't know how good, and this was responding to PSF said, we don't know how good our squad is, but we know it's competitive, and I agree with that. I completely agree with that, and I've said this all along. I said my if Leeds go down this season, which God hope we don't, because we've tried so hard to get it. But if we go down this season, it will be because we don't score enough goals. It will not be because we're not. It will not be because we're not competitive in games. I don't think we're going to be going. I know we lost to Arsenal 5-0. I don't think we're going to get smacked about all of a sudden. I don't think that is going to happen. Like, I don't think we're going to go to Fulham and ship 5 goals. I think we're going to be competitive. Like, if we lose, we'll probably lose by 1 or 2 max. And that's being competitive in games. My issue is are we going to have enough quality in the final third to beat teams? That's my issue. Like, I think we're going to get a lot of 0-0s. I think we can win a lot of games 1-0, potentially 2-1, stuff like that. But are we going to be Are we going to be able to score enough goals sustainably? That's why if we do go down, that'll be why. But I don't think we will. I think we can stay in the league. I really do. Not to mention Leeds are up against a tactical genius in Arteta, Silva, and Moyes. Yeah, they're all good managers. Yeah, to be honest, every manager's good though, isn't it? Like when we talk about sort of every team's good, every manager's good. Like these are all top level coaches. So yeah, that's my feeling. Last time we were relegated, we were reliant on inexperienced kids in the squad. We had a squad of experienced players. I keep saying it will finish 10th. Look, I hope you're right, because we're all on the same page here, Easy. We all are on the same page. The only thing I would say back to that, which I think in response to that, is that I agree with you. I agree we've got a better team right now than the team we got relegated with. 1,000%. We were so disjointed and we were all over the place in that team. This is going to be a well-structured, oiled machine that we've got at the moment. That is what Leeds United will be. My issue isn't that, and it's not how good the squad is compared to last time. And I think if we were playing in that last league that we were in when we got relegated, I think we'd have stayed up that year with this team. That's what I genuinely believe. My issue is that the league's better now. The likes of Bournemouth's and Brentford's, I know Brentford have lost a few players, but so maybe you can throw them out as an example. But all the teams are so good now because they've had such money put into the teams that it's just harder. It's just naturally harder because the teams are better that we're coming up against. Because it's not about having a better team than last time. It's having a more competitive team in comparison to the other teams that we had last time. That's the issue. So I generally think we're miles ahead than we were last time. I really think we are. Like I think we're miles better. But I think, as I said, I think the main issue will be is that the other teams are just better. That's my problem. That is my problem. But I don't disagree with you that we had a worse squad last time. As I said, we had Strauch in midfield. Like the team that we picked against, I don't know if anyone wants to go back at it, but the team we picked against that got relegated with the likes of Koch in midfield, I think, played that day. We had Ayling playing, who at that point was gone. We had, who else did we have? The team is absolutely horrendous. So yeah, and I think it's literally, if you do combine 11 between that Leeds team and the team we've got now, other than potentially Rodrigo you put up front, it's pretty much all this team. Scott, you are forecasting Leeds to struggle to score, but what evidence do you have? We haven't scored a goal from open play yet. We don't look like we're going to score. Our XG numbers are quite poor going forward. And as I said, we've scored 1 goal in 3 games. I think that's quite a... If you're saying that points matter so far, which obviously you have done, and that's where we're at points-wise, and we're mid-table, I can show then go, but we're not scoring like we're mid-table, in terms of we scored 1 goal in 3 games, and it was a penalty from a shot from the edge of the box handball. Now, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you score. And if we score tomorrow from the same goal that we scored against Everton, it's absolutely fine. But we haven't scored a goal from open play yet, and for me, we haven't looked like we're going to create tons of chances, and that is supported by data points as well. We haven't created tons of chances. We had 1 shot on target against Newcastle, and it was in the 90th minute, I believe. I can't name any team really an almost guaranteed win, even Burnley and Sunderland. Yeah, every team's a good team. Every team's a good team. I think we're playing Burnley away, and I think people just think we're going to win, which we might well do. They might be right, but it won't be an easy game. If we win that, it'll be hard. And Sunderland have got a much better team, in my opinion, than Burnley have. And they lost at Burnley, because Burnley under Parker will be well drilled, well oiled, and hard to beat. And we know last year, we played them twice last year. We didn't beat them once. I know we've got a better team now, but so have they. I think we've got better business, though, to be fair. I do think we will win. But Allardyce played about 8 defenders in that game. We needed to win. No, no, it was. I mean, we were in absolute chaos, and also we had Allardyce managers, which we don't have now. We've got Farke, who I think's obviously a much better coach than Sam Allardyce. So as I said, I have. If the debate is, do we have a better squad than we had last time we got relegated? No, the debate will always be on my end. We definitely do have a better squad. Do we have a better manager? Yes. Are we set up better? Yes. Have we got the better profiles and got a full makeup of a squad? Yes. I mean, we were playing with a McKennie who literally did look overweight. I know that was a bit of a joke in the fan base, but he genuinely did. We had Rocker, who was all like, it was pretty awful. PSF says we've played against 3 of the best defences from last season. How many goals are we supposed to score? No, I know that, but it's not. I know, and I know we're playing against hard defence. But do you think in the next sort of, how many goals are we going to score? So in the next 6 games, PSF, I'll ask you this: we are playing Fulham away, we've got Wolves away. We'll use the next 3: Fulham away, Wolves away, and Bournemouth at home. How many goals do you think we're going to score in them 3? Out of a sort of confidence, they're worst defences for sure. I mean, Wolves have already conceded. What did they concede? They conceded 4 against Man City, and they conceded 3 against Everton, and they conceded, I can't think of the other game, but they've been shipping goals all over the gaff. Evidence is that we have limited creativity. DCL and Nemecha are not known as clinical. Perot is, but he's not physical enough. We'll hopefully score some from the midfield and set pieces. Exactly. 6. If we score, I tell you what, if we score 6 goals, PSF, fair play. I don't think we're going to score that many, personally. But I do actually think we're going to win 2-0 tomorrow, so that will put us on the track. But okay, as I said, I hope you're right. This is not me not hoping you're right. And I find it interesting that people have different opinions. Hence, I brought it into the show from Easy's comment. I think it's interesting. But I just look at the other teams in attacking areas specifically, not in defensive areas much, or in midfield. Because I think in midfield, we're going to be really competitive. I think in defence, we've got a really strong defence, in my opinion, which was backed up last year, by the way, when we should have had a much better defence. But we had Meliengo, who threw a load of goals in his own net. We should have had the best defence in the league last year, which is better than the defence that better than the Burnley defence. We should have been the best defence ever in the Championship history last year. Genuinely, that's how good our XG numbers were and our underlying numbers were. So I've got no doubt we're good in defence. I've got no doubt we're good in midfield. My issue is the front line. I just look at other front lines. And I think we're weak up front in comparison to other teams, personally. Like, even look at some of the worst teams, like Fulham are rocking, or Fulham have got Muniz, who we really wanted up front for our team. They've bought Kevin, who a lot of Leeds United fans wanted on the wing. They've bought Chukwueze. They've got the Josh King coming through, who looks fantastic as well. They've got Jimenez on the bench. I look at and they're a team obviously playing this weekend. Then I look at sort of Wolves, who've got Strand Larson up front. We haven't got that up front. We haven't. Exactly, BMG. There is a lack of creativity in the squad. The fact that the board were panicking over Wilson on deadline day says it all. They know it, and so do we. Yeah, that's my feeling. Because we were trying to buy players, by the way, that I liked Wilson as a sign. I think he would have been a good sign, set piece taker, plays on the right, can play in the 10. I liked Wilson as a signing. He don't get in the Fulham team. I'd take 9 or 10 1-0 wins and the same number of 0-0 draws of the season. So would I, mate. It doesn't matter how we win. It honestly doesn't matter. No interest in how we win. I know when we went up last time, everyone used to say we're the most entertaining team in the league under Bielsa, and we probably were. They were probably right. I think we were the most entertaining team. We are not going to be the most entertaining team this year, and I don't care a jot. Because the thing is, people say like it's interesting football. For me right now, interesting football is watching Leeds United in general. I like the competition of playing against these better teams. I enjoy it, and I don't care how crap it is, and I don't care if it's Sean Dyche football. I have no interest. I just want to win. The Everton game wasn't the most, like, I went to my barber the day after, sat in the shop, and I was asking him about the game, and he went, God, that was an absolutely awful game to watch. And I said, I don't care. I have no interest. For me, it was really good to watch. Fantastic to watch. We got the win. I don't think our fans realise how much experience is in the squad. 49s have done their homework. Okay, in terms of, do you mean experience in top 5 leagues? Because I can agree more with that. I don't think we've got tons and tons of Premier League experience. But I don't hate a lot of our signings. As I said, my issue has never been, I've said this a few times, my issue has never been that the signings are really crap. I don't think that's the case. My issue is there isn't enough of them. It's not what we've done, it's what we haven't done that's my issue. We just needed more in the attacking third. I think, and by the way, this is not me like making up a narrative that we need more in the attacking third. This is something that our actual manager, Daniel Farke, said we needed 2 more. We didn't get him. I know he's now gone, he hasn't gone back on it. He's basically said he's going to have to do what he's got to do. But we needed 2 more, and we didn't get him. And as I said, our manager said it. So, like, PSF, you're then saying that our manager's wrong, which you might do. You said you might disagree. You might think our squad's good enough and Farke should do a better job with what he is. I don't know where you stand on that. But, like, as I said, I don't know. We'll create some from the likes of Bogle, but we don't really have the creator in the midfield. I think Tanaka can do it to an extent. I think Tanaka's a fantastic footballer, especially on the ball. I think he's really, really strong. And I think he has got that sort of creative spark that potentially other players in our midfield don't. And obviously, he's obviously struggling with his MCL injury at the moment. It sounds like he's back quicker than we probably expected, which is fantastic because he's the only one I think we've got in our actual squad who has got that sort of X factor in the midfield. I think he's probably the only one, in my opinion. Maybe Stack to an extent, but I think probably Tanaka's the one that can unlock a door with a sort of a game-changing pass. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. The Arsenal game was a one-off. The team was still getting to know each other. I hope, as I said, I do find this interesting because I think a lot of what I consume, and I think as I think you said in your comment that a lot of the sort of creators are probably on my spectrum with this, where they sort of deem that the squad's probably not quite good enough, which obviously is, as I said, what the manager thinks as well. Hence he said it, and he said we need 2 more. But I find it interesting that we've got other people with different opinions. I think that's the whole. That's exactly what I set the channel up for, to have these debates. This is exactly what I want, which is why I brought you comment up in the first place. Because I'm just interested to see how it goes now. But I think as a narrative as a whole, I do think the fan base were disappointed with the window. I think when I've looked across social media and I've seen it so much, there was. I mean, to be honest, a lot of people are more negative than I am about it. If I'm being totally honest. I don't think anyone is totally disagreeing with you, PSF, but we need to be realistic that it will be tough. The issue is not that the squad is bad, it's that the others are very good mostly. Yeah, that's my sort of feeling. I am not a Farke fan and believe he's too cautious, but even so, I believe we have enough. Fair enough. Where do you think we'll finish, PSF? Because obviously Easy's like sort of in around the top 10. Where do you think we're going to finish? Out of curiosity. BMG says crazy. Hopefully it was. Plus, I think I think we tried to take them on a bit rather than park the bus. Also, they did score most of their chances, which made it worse. Yeah, I know. Farke mentioned this in his presser recently. He said that they had 5 shots on target and scored 5. I thought we deserved to lose that game quite comfortably. But I agree to an extent that I think we set up wrong in that game, personally. I don't know why we went with Pro up front in a game where we're playing against Gabriel and Saliba. I just cannot understand that selection. I think I said it before the game. I just don't get it. The only thing I think people obviously afterwards were saying we should have played Longstaff, Stack, and long. I think I said Longstaff, Stack, and Tanaka in midfield. I think that was what people were saying after. You think we'll finish 9th-ish? Okay. But you think we'll have enough? Right. I didn't think you were going to say that high, I've got to be honest. I thought you were going to be more like, because of your comment above where you said, but I believe we have enough. So I don't know. I read that more as like you were thinking we'd have enough to sort of stay up, not sort of finish in 9th. As I said, I hope you're right. Who's going to take the pen with Defo getting? Pro on the bench. DCL missed his last. Strout potentially bench also. I'd have DCL on penalties. Yeah. DCL's not actually got an awful penalty record. I mean, I remember him scoring one for Everton against us. Did he score 2 in that game, penalties? I think he's only scored 1, didn't it? But he's not actually got an awful penalty record. I know he missed one, but everyone misses penalties. Strout's missed penalties for Leeds. I remember missing one against Blackburn. And did he miss one against Blackburn? Who did he miss against? Has he missed 2 for Leeds? So I think we've got people who can set penalties in the team. I don't think Okafor will be awful on a penalty, if I'm being honest. I've always thought Tanaka won't be awful on a penalty as well. We did deserve to lose and lose badly, but on another day we could have got away with a 2-0. If Strout could have scored, it would have been different. Key moments matter. Yes, no, I agree. I do agree. I just think that what we've done well in the Newcastle game especially, and this is where we learn, and this is why I was so glad with what Farke did. It's where we learned and adapted from the Newcastle game to obviously from the Arsenal game to the Newcastle game is we had a focal point, because what happened in the Arsenal game constantly is because they're such a good pressing team, we naturally couldn't play out. So when we went long, Perrault lost his duel, and then it just came back at us over and over again, and it was just constant cycle of them attacking us, them attacking us, them attacking us. The best thing we did against Newcastle, which is for me a concept that we should be going with in every game this season, is we had Nemecha and then DCL up front, and what they offer you is when the ball goes up. When the ball goes up to our striker, they held the ball up, which allowed us to then attack the other team, one, but two, not have it coming straight back on us again. And that was the main difference in my opinion. And I do think if we'd have played Nemecha or Calvert-Lewin up front, it would have been a completely different game. I know Gruev got a lot of stick, and as I said, people want to play Longstaff, Stack, and Tanaka in the midfield. I don't think that was the main issue in that game. I think the main issue was the number 9, because, as I said, when the ball went long, he lost every duel, which, as I said, isn't Perrault's fault as such. He just isn't a physical player. I'd lose to Strauch and to Saliba and thingy, obviously. Like pretty much everyone in the comments would. So that I'm not blaming him, because that isn't his game. But for me, Farke should have noticed that and put on someone. I honestly couldn't believe it when he walked out in the second half as well. Because, as I said, if we'd have won them duels sometimes, and even if Nemecha didn't win every duel and he won 50% of the duels, that would have been 50% more than he won, which allows us then to attack 50% more, 50% of the time, as opposed to them attacking us 90% of the time. Chaggy Babe says, get Bamford back. Not for me, mate. Not for me. Nemecha did a very good job in the sense of holding it up and preventing it from coming straight back in the Newcastle game. Exactly. 100%. He was fantastic at that. That's what the reason we did so well in the Newcastle game. One of the main reasons. Obviously, I think we were defensively assured. I think Shaw Longstaff had a fantastic game in the midfield. But it was that when the ball went up long, we kept it up and held it up, and that was fantastic. And the Everton game was slightly different, because Everton allowed us to play through the lines. So Perrault constantly, if you remember that first half against Everton, Perrault constantly dropped into the midfield, into that sort of number 10 role, which we know he's really good at. And then he laid the ball out wide, and we created attacks in that manner. But just against the top teams, like when you're playing Arsenal, Perrault can't drop into that number 10 role and sort of play from there, because it won't work. They get too tight on him and he just loses possession. But actually, Everton allowed him to go into that sort of number 10 pocket between the sort of holders of Jussigani Gay and Dewsbury Hall. Was it in that game? I can't remember who played the other sort of. Oh, it was Tim Rabunam who played in the sort of 2 6s, and he got in between the 6s and their centre backs and sort of played off it from there and dropped into that role and then played his pass, which is what his game is. Against Arsenal, that was never going to work. That was never ever going to work. So that's why he messed up. But then he obviously corrected it for the Newcastle game, and it works much better. Easy says, I forecast Pro to be our top scorer this season, and he will be. How many do you reckon he gets? Pro played decent against Everton, which shows that we can use him in some games. As I said, yeah, exactly. We can use Pro when we need. We should be using Perrault when we need a striker who's going to drop in between the number 6s and their centre halves in that pocket. When we want a striker to do that particular job, that's when we need to play Perrault. If we're going to go long, like we did when we're playing through the lines, and we can pass it into, when Shark can give it into Tanaka and he can play it through into Perrault, and then you can link the play and then you can spread it out wide, which is what against the Everton, perfect. When we can't play through a team, which is going to be a lot of teams. Like, a lot of teams are such good presses that you can't. And when we have to hit the long ball, that's when we need a target man who's going to hold the ball up. But when we know we can play through a team, that's when we can obviously, then Pro will be fine. That'll be absolutely fine. So I do think Pro will have a use. It's just got to be for particular matches. And as I said, it's got particular matches picked out for particular games. So that's the situation, really. Pro played, yeah, I've read that one. Has Bamford found a club yet? I don't think so. There's been Wrexham mentioned, aren't there, loads, but I don't think Nemecha did a really good job in. Yeah, I've read that one. Right. I probably will be wrapping it up soon as well. Although I do, as I said, I've really enjoyed this chat. It's exactly sort of where I wanted to go. You guys get involved, me responding, we're having back and forth, and I think it's good that sort of PSF and sort of Easy have different opinions. I think it sort of makes the show really. And BMG is obviously is an absolute stone wall. Is that the right word? but a real part. It's practically part of the channel. It's like me just having a conversation with my dad. Probably 15. Blimey. Ellen Beck says, thanks, Scott. Hi, Scott. And I need to thank you, actually, which is why I said thanks, because in my preview, I had some stats in there about Fulham. I think have conceded 5 penalties in the last 5 games. That all them stats came from Ellen Bank 1. So, yeah, follow him. He's fantastic on Twitter. He's a massive account. You probably already know he is. But yeah, hello, mate. We're on about, at the moment, we're discussing how many Perot is going to score this season. I don't think he's going to get 15 easy, if I'm being honest. BMG says, easy, I'd be amazed. 9 at the most, in my opinion. Yeah, I'm not sure with that. I think Calvert-Lewin will be our top scorer, and I think he could get double figures, which would be a good return, by the way. I honestly think that Perot will score somewhere between 5 and 7 if he's lucky. Perot even have 15. Perot, I presume he was saying Perot won't even have 15 shots on target. Yeah, no, yeah. There is. I'd be amazed if Perot scores 15 goals. I'd be absolutely amazed. I'm not even convinced I see the full rationale for that, to be honest. I don't think he's going to play enough games to score 15 goals. 15 goals, by the way, as well. The reason I'm sort of jumping back on this is like, there's just no way, in my opinion, is because that would put him in the top sort of 5 or 6 top scorers in the division. There's no way Perot finishes the season in the top 5 or 6 for top scorers. If Perot scores 15 goals, I suppose, to be fair, easy, you think we're going to finish 10th. And if Perot scores 15 goals, you're probably right. The Golden Boot winner sometimes doesn't get 20. 15 would be unreal, especially as he might be on the bench a lot. Yeah, I'm not even convinced he's going to play 15 times from this point in the season, to be honest. Yeah. One point I was going to make is that Longstaff needs to start tomorrow, even if Tanaka's fit. Yes. Good point. I agree. I did my preview this morning, Ellen back, and I said in that that I would start Longstaff. I completely agree. I think they've got, in the likes of Sander Berg and Sasha Lukic, and especially Josh King, the new lad in midfield, they've got a really sort of progressive midfield in there, and I think we need a disruptor in there, and I think the best disruptor we've got in the team is, of course, Sean Longstaff, so I completely agree. I'd be playing Longstaff all day. Also, he was fantastic against Newcastle in a sort of similar game state, I think, in my opinion. So, yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. I think Longstaff is for me, the midfield tomorrow I'll go with is Ampadu as the 6, and I do think he'll be back, and I do think he'll start, actually. That's a bit of a prediction for you. Stack and Longstaff. The only thing I've got with that is the lack of creation. I do think Tanaka obviously offers more creation in the midfield. But I agree with you, Ellen Back. I think the disruption that Longstaff gives and the sort of the tackling prowess. Because the other thing with Longstaff is, even though I'm talking about the lack of creation he gives you, sometimes because Longstaff's such a good tackler, we win the ball up high with Longstaff quite a lot, and then we can go straight out of teams, and it creates a chance, even though it's not like him playing. Like, people go chance created, or it must be Odegaard feeding a lovely ball between the fullback and the centre half. A chance can be created by winning the ball up high, and Longstaff provides that. So yeah, I expect Perot to be our main striker after 6 games. Okay. Creativity, perhaps Okafor. Yeah, I think Okafor. I said this on my stream. We're speaking the same language here. I said this on my stream, not my stream, on my video earlier. I think our best thing for this particular game is Okafor against. There's 2 ways I think we're going to score goals. The best chance of scoring goals against this Fulham team. Okafor up against Tete. I think that's a battle we can definitely win. And DCL up against Calvin Bassey. I said this earlier on my video earlier. If I'm DCL, the one bit of advice I give him for this game, obviously he knows way more about the game than I do, is that I would be constantly, if I would be stood on Calvin Bassey the whole game. I would be stood on Bassey the whole game. That he's rash. The reason we talk about the fact that they've conceded so many penalties over the last 5 games, I bet he's responsible for 3 of them. He is so rash in the box. Get the ball down the left-hand side, get Okafor run at someone, get a cutback, get a pass back to Goodmanson, get a ball to the back post, and get DCL versus Bassey in the box, and I'm telling you, he'll pull you down for a penalty. Especially when he knows how good DCL is in the air. Make him make a decision. Make him decide, do I want Calvert-Lewin to get this header on this ball, or do I want to pull him down for a penalty? Because he will pull him down. We've seen it before. That Calvin Bassey's a really good physical, dominant centre-back, but sometimes he's clumsy. and he makes poor decisions. It's why I wouldn't want him at Leeds, which might be mad, but I wouldn't. We needed depth. That's why we brought strikers in. So you think then, Easy, that Perot's going to be our number 9, and then you think Perot's going to be our number 9, and then sort of we brought DCL and Nemectra into play, sort of the backups. See, I disagree completely. I think it's quite obvious to me that DCL will be our number 9 this year. I think the money we've put him on, I think the way that we've talked about him, I think it's so obvious for me that Calvert-Lewin, I think Perot's probably our 3rd choice striker, in my opinion. And as I said, I think if Calvert-Lewin's fit, come obviously he's still climatising to the, not to the league, but he's climatising to his fitness levels that he needs to get to for a Daniel Farke team. Because one thing we need to pick up on fitness, by the way, and I think why Calvert-Lewin hasn't been involved in so much, sort of Farke gave a sort of hint on this when he said in his press conference this week that one of the main things we're focusing on is the fitness levels of teams. I thought that was really interesting. I think that's why we haven't seen Calvert-Lewin play. But as I said, for me, I would Calvert-Lewin is definitely the striker that we're playing up front. And I think getting later in the season, I think he'll be our starting striker throughout the whole year, really. I didn't see a preview, but I'd not start Ampadu or Tanaka unless they are 110% fit. I'd stick with Stack, Gruev and Longstaff and then bring Ampadu on. See, I disagree. Ampadu went down a week earlier than Tanaka. I think people sometimes forget that. I'm not saying you don't, the BMG, but Ampadu will be later in his development in terms of his, unless his injury is worse than that Tanaka's, which potentially could be the case. But I think Ampadu will be close to starting, and I think if you can start him, I'd start him. The other thing with Ampadu, obviously, sometimes it takes a bit of time to get back into the swing of it. When he's been out for a while, hopefully he's not been out too long to the point where he's not going to be as bad with that. Pro is the best finisher we have, undoubtedly. He just doesn't make up for it in other areas of the game. Prem is too intense for his profile. Yeah, I agree. I do agree, to be honest. Bassey's maybe not maybe the greatest player, but he's a unit. Yeah, he is. But you've just got to. That's why he's not the greatest player, and he makes mistakes. And I think we can. If I'm Calvert-Lewin, because Calvert-Lewin's smart, by the way. Like he's not. He's played in the Premier League before. He's got that streetwise that you need in a striker. Like he will go down with an easy touch. So yeah, get yourself in the box, get yourself up against Calvin Bassey, and make him make a decision. Because I'm telling you, he'll pull you down. Dark horse this season could be Aronson in his proper role as box-to-box midfielder. Need more engine. I disagree on that. We've been seeing eye to eye, Ellen Banks, so long. I don't really see what he's got to offer. BMG says, one rule, Scott never disagrees with me. I know, I can't believe it. Eventually you'll say something, to be fair. But so far, the streak's going well. I mean, we've talked about me playing in goal as well. And obviously that's a really good option. So, but yeah, Aronson, I disagree on. I sort of talked about it earlier, so I don't want to get into too much. I don't think he's got a lot to offer for me. He's not, his physicality is so bad that even though he can run around a bit, he naturally, because he's so weak off the ball, I think he just gets bullied off the ball. And we saw that against Newcastle when he just lost his man one time because he just got pushed around. I'd have sold him as well and it made sense in my opinion. Yeah, I would have sold Pro. Last season Pro started slowly. I think once he scores, he won't stop. I just disagree. This Pro stuff I just can't get on board with. I just don't see him being useful at all. I put him there with Aronson, to be honest. As like, I just think they're both. I just don't see what they can have to offer. Pecking order for me up front is DCL, Nemectra, and Pro third. Yeah, but stop it. I need to just disagree with one time. Not because he's a worse player, but because of what Jack said. His profile, he'll get gobbled up in a lot of games. Yeah, I do agree. And the problem is when he gets gobbled up, the ball then comes back on us, and it's a much harder job to defend. Nice to see Strand Larson still out. Hopefully, still missing when we play Wolves next. Yeah, I agree. That will be massive. That will be massive. Rule 2, see Rule 1. Yeah, exactly. Easy says, I think Aronson has improved too. I haven't seen that personally. I just haven't seen it. What part of his game has improved? I just don't see it. I'd have potentially sent him out on loan, to be honest. Your playing goal is more likely than Pro getting 15 goals. Yeah. No, I'm going to disagree with you because that's an opportunity to disagree. And you've now told me that I never disagree, so I need to find a way. So no, that is not more likely. Although Daniel Farke did call me last night, exclusive. Daniel Farke called me last night and said, "Am I available if Melier is going to have to play? He's playing you, Scott." That's what he said. Yeah, that didn't quite work, but you get what I'm saying. Anyway, I do need to go because it's nearly 9 o'clock now. But hey up, you're playing goal. His understanding. Okay, maybe yeah. Fulham have conceded 44. This is what I mean. Look at these stats here. This is what you need. I needed more of these in my preview. Fulham have conceded 44 fouls in the Premier League this season, with only Brighton giving away more. 47 Lukic 14, level with Will Hughes. Sasha Lukic leads the charts of fouls among players with 12, while the start of the season, no players had more yellow cards than him. Yeah, but he is that sort of player, isn't he? But I think he plays in obviously in that deep line role for Fulham that I think naturally leads to that. Also, I think Fulham, obviously, they've played so far. Brighton away, who are obviously a really good team. Chelsea away. I knew they played at the end of the game. I can't remember. But they've... and Man United, of course. And I think their games, I look at where Man United are operating in that sort of... that with the Cunha and sort of... and when we're in the 10s. And I think, obviously, that's why fouls will have been committed in that sense. The Scott in goal shouts need to keep coming. Safe pair of hands. Yes. This is becoming a thing. This is becoming a thing. My ability in goal. I played in there when I was in year 6. All a good... 13, 14 years ago now? More. Perot is a classic case of being good in a dominant team, but ineffective in a team that gets dominated. He'll probably do well at a top 6 team. Disagree with you on that, BMG. I don't think he plays for a top 6 team, personally. Farke called you to ask you if you can carry the drinks. Hey, I'd take it. If I can be involved in the game, I'll take it. Even if it's carrying the drinks. Although, if I was going to carry the drinks, why I couldn't then come on here with you? Unless I see what I could do. I could do a Ben Foster, and when I'm carrying the drinks on the sideline, I could do like a live stream. Like I know people obviously do watch alongs. Maybe I should do one of them. But maybe I should carry the drinks on the dugout, like filming the game and doing a live stream. That'd be quality content, wouldn't it? And I can just be talking to Farke and like having a sort of 30-minute sort of conversation with him. What are you thinking, Farke? Where we're going to change the game? Getting some of your guys' comments in. You saying he needs to sub him off, and me going to Farke. Yeah, let's get Bamford off or whatever it would be. Score predictions for the game. I said 2-0 Leeds because I'm really biased. No, I do. As I said, I look at Fulham. They've last season, Fulham only beat at home 3 of the bottom 12 teams. 3 of them at home last year. So, and I think they lost 5 of them. And then I think they drew obviously a few of them. But they didn't even beat Southampton and Ipswich at home last year. So, you know. Lukic is almost much of a walking yellow card as Jefferson Lerma. Yeah, he was guaranteed for yellows back in the day, wasn't he? Oh, well, still now. BMG, you hit the nail on the head, but I think I think you mean we become dominant. I don't think we do. I don't think we do on that. Anyway, I am losing my voice now. I can feel it sort of doing, and I've done an hour and 10 minutes. But I think you guys have enjoyed this 8 o'clock stream on a Friday. So maybe, just maybe, that might become a thing. What do you think? Should I do that? 8 p.m. on a Friday as like always a live stream? Because obviously it's not gonna be live streams every day, but I think it's nice on a Friday. Like I might have a beer next time doing this. But yeah. Anyway, thanks all for watching, as always. Thanks for you guys getting involved in the comments. If you're not watching live, maybe come around for 8 p.m. next week, because we might just do this again. I'll let you know anyway in later videos. But yeah, thanks all for watching, as always. My eyes are going to fall out my head, because I've looked at screens for so long today. So what I'm going to do is finish this and then go watch some more Netflix and look at more screens. But yeah, thanks all for watching, everybody, and I'll see you all later. Bye for now.